Speaking about the matchup against vampires, uh, these are the cards that most decks, actually all the decks pack. So you can always count on seeing these cards in every vampire build in this block construct. So they usually start out fast with Bloodghast or Vampire X Mage. And the thing about Bloodghast is that I usually try to save Journey to Nowhere to it. But if they start with X Mage and I have the Journey, depending on my hand, I usually try to minimize the damage that I take. And also because saving cards doesn't actually protect you from Mind Sludge unless you have cancel. Gatekeeper of Malakir is a card that you should be aware of when you play your Sphinx of Jar unprotected. Malakir Blood Witch is also a card that you can't deal unless you have the Burst Lighting or Day of Judgment, and they usually pack in Grim Discovery in order to deal with it, because Grim Discovery can retrieve a fetch that they already used to fetch a swamp, and they can retrieve a creature that you destroyed. That's why Journey to Nowhere and Devote Whitecaster are such good cards in this matchup. Speaking of the card that actually wrecks you, it's Mind Sludge. The thing is, if they have it, it becomes a 50-50 depending on the board position when they play it, and if you have either counters available or if you already played some creatures like a Sphinx or some Lightcasters and you can draw your way out of it because you have decent cards against them. Into the Royal on a Default Whitecaster and stuff can actually bring you back in the game. The thing is, when they curve out to their 5 mana, usually they may have either Malakir or Mind Sludge, and there are some versions that also play Halo Hunter. It's a card that can destroy Emiria Angel, and also Shepherd of the Lost or Yona if some. But already, if they have Yona, you are probably dead because against Mono Black they usually name Black. Also, they may have Desecrated Hurt. Some players pack it, some players don't. I think it's a bad card even in the control matchup because when they arrive to 5 mana, either 4 or 5 mana is actually relevant because either you have cancel or you are going to play a Sphinx anyway. So it actually doesn't wreck you that much. So if they have a combination of all of them, you have to decide whether they're trying to bait you with let's see, if they play Malakir Blood Witch with still 2 or 3 cards in hand, they may have Mind Sludge and they are just trying to bait a counter. So you have to be careful, try to assess what you can play around, what you can't. Usually when I don't have cancels, I try to play my hand all the way, like playing N-Kick, Sphinx of Lost Souls, just to have a creature on the board. Because if they pack Idiosand main deck, they usually board it out. That's one of the things I usually do when I'm also playing against vampires is board out Ymir Angels, because they usually don't do anything. They may champ block a little, but they just get wrecked by Feast of Blood, Idiosand, and I prefer to have the White Casters and Sanctifiers. Sanctifier is a card that comes turn earlier because you usually don't want to, actually 2 turns earlier, because you don't want to play your Ymir on turn 4 unless you're going to get some creature out of it. You usually play it on turn 5 with a land backup, while Sanctifiers you can play it on turn 3 and it can actually stall the board unless they have a vampire out or they are still packing in the disfigures, which most of the versions take out. So these are the cards that you really want to be concerned about. Then again, they have Quest for the Grave Lord. It's a card that can go around your removal if it's not Journey to Nowhere. If you play Day of Judgment and they have lots of creatures, they're going to attack you with a 5/5 back, which is usually lethal. I try to save Into the Royal or even a Lightcaster for it. You have to be careful when you play your Lightcaster because if they have a creature out, they can also kill their own creature with this figure, and that usually gets you. Some versions play the Soulstar Expedition sideboard in order to have more creatures to play against you. They play the Soulstar on turn 1 and then they just try to trade creatures for cards and bring them back. A card I didn't talk was, even when I was talking about the Sanctifiers in my deck, is that Carnage Altar is the card that actually wrecks UI, because if they play it out and then have Bloodghast or either another creature, you are usually behind. They can just sit and draw cards unless they Mind Sludge the hell out of you, and they can retrieve Bloodghast infinitely to draw all the deck. Usually Sanctifiers gets there, and unless they have multiples, which is hard to beat. Other cards. Some versions play Lacerators main deck, some versions don't. It actually depends. I usually like to see a Lacerator turn 1 because it means it's a more aggro version, which I can do with Day of Judgment. If they have Lacerated, it usually means they have only 1 or 2 Mind Sludges main deck. I'm actually not seeing. About the removal, they may have Aegisand, Feast of Blood. Most versions play Feast of Blood. They also may be packing Disfigures. It depends. So removal are these 3 cards plus the Gatekeeper. As I've said, you have to be very careful about it. And some versions also play a Saurine main deck, which you have to be very careful because you only have the Volt Whitecaster to deal with, and if they stick a Saurine, it actually means it's game over because you can't just attack it unless you have something else. So this is the black cards that you should be scared of when you're going to play in a queue.